So when you first purchase your GoPro camera, the first thing you think is, well, how do you use it? Where do you mount it? And what sort of video can you capture? When I first got my GoPro, I searched the internet, and the only thing I could find is mounting the camera to your mask or your head, which turned out, as you'll see, to be one of the worst ways to use the GoPro. So I decided to test a few different mounting options. So stick around here and we'll go through some of the different options. So using the Ram mount branded hardware, a couple of screws, a pipe clamp and some wing nuts clamp around the neck of the bottle. Then I used a Ram extension arm, attached that to the base. Then using the Ram GoPro mount adapter, I attached the camera to the tank. Because the camera sits about head height, you get a pretty good surface view. So on the way down, you can start to see the main issue with this mount. That's your exhaust bubbles. In different positions, the exhaust bubbles can be worse. You get a reasonable view of what the diver sees, plus you can reference where the diver is. It's a nice steady view where you get a good third-person view over the shoulder of the diver. A bit like having a monkey on your back. As you can see here, we're retrieving an anchor. So overall, the ease of use is pretty poor. It's hard to reach back when you're diving, and it's hard to guess where the camera is pointed. Since it doesn't extend too much, it's not that much of a snag point, but you probably wouldn't use it diving kelp or a wreck. The shot you get from the camera is pretty good on the surface, but its major drawback is your exhaust bubbles hitting it. The rig stays reasonably level and stable. Overall, the performance, I rate it as bad. This is not one of my preferred camera mount positions. To get the camera further away from the air bubbles, I've used an additional arm and a double bore joiner from the Ram mount brand. This gets the camera outbound from your head, where the air bubbles won't beat the camera up. There's one thing to keep in mind: if you roll off a boat, the camera position will be thrown around. It's not too difficult to reach around and adjust the camera, although you will have to get used to roughly blind framing the shot. Once again on the surface, you get a very good view. You can see that the exhaust bubbles don't knock the camera around as much. It's a nice, steady, smooth shot, and you can see the diver's head moving around independently of the camera view. Overall, the ease of use is pretty good, although it is still behind your head. Due to it sticking up so much, the snag factor is going to be pretty high. You'll have to be careful when this mount's used. The image is relatively stable, and you get a good perspective with the diver in shot. Overall, this is a mount that I'll reuse. I'm using the Ram mount extension arm and the GoPro ball mount to make a simple handle for the GoPro camera. It ends up looking a little bit like the GoPole bobber. This is probably the easiest and the most flexible way to use the camera. You can point it in any direction and at any object. You can even do the selfies. The biggest drawback though is how shaky it is, because you've got no other means to stabilise it. So you'll pick up a fair bit of handling noise and you'll have to try pretty hard to keep it steady to create a nice smooth shot. Overall, it's very easy to use. Just point and shoot. It's pretty easy to hang on to while you're diving, and it's not going to be a snag issue. Because you can point the camera anywhere easily, you'll end up with a pretty good shot in relation to your subject matter. Your only drawback will be your stability. Overall, the performance is fair, but this can be improved if you use it in combination with a mount on your catch bag. Have a look at the next segment. So here I've attached the camera to the catch bag by putting a ball mount on the handle of the catch bag. When you're not filming, you can just leave it attached to the catch bag. Another benefit is that you can use the handles on the catch bag to get a two-hand grip to give you a better stable shot. So I'm descending down the line using the camera handheld. It's quite easy to attach the camera to the catch bag with a few turns of the screw. You can even hold the camera in a pistol grip with a catch bag attached. The ease of use is really simple. Snagability is pretty low. The shot quality is pretty good. Best of all, it's nice and stable. This is an easy set and forget, clip it on your bag approach. Here you can see the footage is a lot smoother, not as jerky as when the camera was handheld. I've made a simple mount out of two strips of perspex and using a GoPro tripod adapter. I've sandwiched the BCD between the two sheets of perspex. Zeegle have a GoPro mount that you can attach in the same position. Like before, when you roll in from a boat, the camera gets knocked around. But it's quite easy to adjust back into position. As you can see, the hose is in shot and you're pretty close in on the diver. The air bubbles hit the camera and shake it, as well as the noise. It's a bit hard to see the bigger picture with this shot. Overall, the ease of use is pretty good, and it's out of the way and it won't cause much of a problem with snagging. However, the shot's pretty bad, for a few reasons. You don't get to see much of what's going on. The camera gets hit with the air bubbles. There's a lot of noise and the camera is shaking around. All up, this is not a good mount to use. This next mount is a variation of the first mount. I've mounted the camera on the outside of the vest to try and get it further away from the bubbles. This can be mounted on the left or the right side, but just be careful if you've got a pull cord attached to a dump valve. You don't want to sandwich the camera over that side of your vest. As always, when you do a roll entry off a boat, the camera gets knocked around, and it's relatively easy to grab up and adjust the position of the camera. As you can see, it's scallop spawning season. There's thousands of tiny little scallops scattered all over the seabed. So with this mount, the ease of use is pretty good. And snaggability is not going to be an issue. However, the shot is not great. We get a fair bit of movement and the camera gets knocked by the exhaust bubbles. So overall, the performance is poor. We need to keep looking for a better mount position. This time we're using the same mount, but we have lowered the position and set the camera upside down. With the GoPro set to upside down recording, your footage when downloaded will be up the right way. There's not so much of a problem with the camera being knocked around when you roll off a boat, because it's protected by your body. The footage isn't bad. I'm not sure if the tripod base has rotated or if the mount is leaning to one side, but you can see the horizon's not level. We're about 30 to 45 degrees from being level. Overall, the ease of use is good. Snaggability is not a problem, and the shot we get is pretty good. The stability is pretty good, and the camera doesn't get hit by air bubbles. Overall, the performance is fair. This is probably the best setup out of the 3 different options we've looked at by clamping the camera to your BCD. One thing to note, because the camera is set so low, when you hit the surface, the camera is most likely going to be still under the water. One of the most talked about scuba mounts is either the head strap or the GoPro mounted directly to the mask. If you're using the head strap like I am here, you need to hold on to the camera as you enter the water because it's pretty easy for the camera to get knocked off your head, and I'd suggest always using a lanyard when using the GoPro on the head strap. The footage is very shaky. I tried several times to do smooth pans with my head, but looking back over the footage, I can't tell anything that's smooth. During this dive, the camera actually fell off my head twice. After tightening the headband, I didn't have any further issue with it. Overall, the ease of use is not good. It is prone to coming off your head. The snaggability is a bit high because it sits prone above your head. The shot you get from the camera in this position is really bad, and the overall stability of the camera is poor. This is without a doubt the worst way to use a GoPro when scuba diving. Next we have the GoPole. I had to think about making one do-it-yourself style, but after evaluating the price of the components and checking out how much it cost, I decided it wasn't worth my effort and I went out and bought one off the shelf. I've used it with and without the LCD monitor attached. It's quite easy to use without the monitor, and if you're in shallow, bright waters, sometimes it's hard to see the LCD monitor that far away anyway. It's great for doing the selfies, even if there's a couple of divers. A few friends, when I've told them how the footage was shot, thought it was shot by a third diver. Overall, the ease of use was pretty good. Snaggability is not too bad because you're in full control of the GoPole at all times. The shots you get from it are very good. It's pretty stable, and with a bit of practice I think I'd be able to improve the stability. Overall, I was really impressed with the GoPole itself and the footage it takes. Definitely be using this again. I reconfigured my head strap to make a crude wrist strap, just to test out the GoPro in this position. You can turn the camera on and off as you need it, and fold the camera out of way when not in use. You can even do the selfie shot, you just have to rotate the footage in post. The ease of use was very good. Snaggability is pretty good, it's just sitting there on your wrist. The quality of shot I thought was pretty good, and it was reasonably stable. This was the first time that I had used the wrist strap. Overall, I thought the performance was pretty good and well worth investing in a proper wrist strap. Now to wrap it up, we want to have a look at the best handheld options. The best option I could recommend would be to use the GoPro on the wrist strap. It's super simple and you can turn it on just to film the bits of the dive that you want to film. I'd recommend the GoPole next. You get some fantastic shots from it. Obviously you have to carry it through your whole dive, but it's pretty versatile for taking front-facing shots as well as selfie shots. I'd also include as a runner-up the handheld and the handheld attached to the catch bag. If you're going out collecting scallops or crays, it's not a bad spot to put the camera in case there's something that comes along you want to film. Now onto the best mounted options. If you can't be bothered with filming while you dive and you just want to capture the dive, the mount on the BCD upside down is probably the simplest, no fuss position. While the over-the-shoulder 2-leg mount is a little cumbersome, it does provide a really good third-person shot so that others can see you in the shot. I hope this review helps.